If you're watching this, it's highly likely that you're very excited about Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, as I am. Doubtless by now you've watched the new trailer, which has just come out today. I'm recording this the night before, so it's quite a covert operation going on here. But what I wanted to do is talk about what I can see in the new trailer, how the Chinese Room are handling this new Amnesia game, and why I'm hoping it's going to be superior to Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Now, if you didn't know, the Chinese Room are actually developing A Machine for Pigs. Frictional Games are working on another first-person horror title in the meantime. And if you know anything about the Chinese Room, then you'll know that their last game they made was Dear Esther. Now that was a completely different game altogether, but the important thing to take away from it is how the narrative was portrayed. This was done through voiceover and through exploring an environment. It is this that is going to be transferred into Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs. Due to this, I suspect that all of the letter reading you had to do in Amnesia: The Dark Descent will be mostly removed. And there is actually another reason for me saying that. Dan Pinchbeck, who is the creative director or something of that kind of the Chinese Room, he's actually said he doesn't want to break the immersion of the game itself. He doesn't want you to be going into an infantry, for instance, or pausing the game. He doesn't want you to be able to escape the horror that's going to be chasing you. Before we go on to how much the gameplay might have changed, though, I'd like to move back to the narrative again. Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs is actually set 60 years after the events of The Dark Descent. You'll be playing in the late 1800s, which puts it just after the Industrial Revolution just got going. Now, one thing that Dan Pinchbeck again has specifically picked out is that there was an industry in trading body parts around this era, mentioning that people had ashtrays made out of human skulls, that kind of thing. These body parts were also used in scientific experiments by those crazy macabre scientists you always hear about in the history books and in most horror films. Now, I'm putting two and two together here because Dan has mentioned that as well in interviews before, and the enemies in Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs seem to be kind of, I presume, some kind of humanoid pig thing, judging by the squeals and the movements and things we've seen. Not much of them yet, though. I'm guessing the machine being referred to in the game's title is something to do with turning people or experimenting with these people and turning them into these pig things. Something that seems quite clear is this machine is going to be a huge feature in the game, quite obviously, but I mean in the actual environment. You'll be going around this huge machine. You can see in the newest trailer there's a moment that cuts to black pretty quickly, but the whole environment seems to be shaking as if it is this machine. And if you remember in The Dark Descent, there was some evil force that was constantly chasing you, and I can only imagine that this machine is the thing replacing that. Whether it has a mind of its own or it doesn't is something we can debate, I'm not sure. But I find it odd that they stated the main character, Oswald Mandus, has a disastrous, in air quotes, expedition to Mexico, which draws similarities and parallels to the one that Daniel had to Africa, where he found the orb which brought the evil in The Dark Descent. Is there something in that? I don't know, we'll see, I guess. Also in the trailer you'll notice that there's a big emphasis on pulling levers and putting objects inside machines to bring them to life in some kind of way. So whether it's an evil force from Mexico or something that brings this machine back to life, or it's actually the player who brings the machine back to life, which is possible because the narrative actually goes back in time. You'll be playing in the past, you'll be playing in dreams, and you'll be playing in the reality of the present. The idea behind that being that the player has to piece all these fragments together, unlike the rather linear-ish narrative. Well, it's a linear narrative in The Dark Descent. The details of what happens are picked up from the environment and the letters, but in A Machine for Pigs, the focus seems to be ensuring that the player doesn't quite know what's going on, so they're always looking out for things in the environment to explore, but at the same time, you're not going to want to explore in the environment because that brings out all the nasty crap, as you know. So it's this design philosophy, not giving the player much information and allowing them to only glimpse at certain things and know about certain things at different times, that pertains throughout the narrative and the gameplay. Now, gameplay-wise, A Machine for Pigs is going to be very much like The Dark Descent. There will be a sanity meter of some kind, so when you go in the dark you will start to go a bit more mental. I hope that they really work on this factor actually. I think the sanity meter was one of the strongest parts of the Dark Descent and it could have gone much further. And the reason for that is because it really is the core of why Amnesia is scary in the first place. When you have an enemy that's chasing you, you can't look at them because you'll go insane, which only makes you make noises and makes them find you easier. You also have to be in the dark so they can't see you, and being in the dark makes you go insane as well, so you can't be there for too long. And all the while you're listening to your character panic and pant, as you probably are at the same time behind your monitor. And it's these combinations of things that really worked in the Dark Descent. Now, the Chinese version wants to take this a little bit further. As I said before, they don't want you to be able to come out of that immersive environment. They don't want you to be able to go into an inventory and the game pauses. They want everything to be inside the game somehow. On top of that, so another layer, they really want people to fear dying in the game. If you've ever played Daisy, the mod for Arma 2, you'll know that dying in that game involves you losing all of your, I think it's your inventory and that kind of thing, which you've likely built up over a number of hours and you don't want to lose it just like that. I don't think that they'll be putting that kind of thing in Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, but they're trying to replicate that feeling. One way they could do this, and it has been done before, Eternal Darkness is the game I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what really made this classic horror game stand out was its sanity effects. Examples of these would be, you've just been through a room, you go through a door and then you emerge in the same room, and that keeps happening over and over again, and one time it will be full of enemies or something like that. Sometimes it will have an enemy charging at you all of a sudden and then they disappear like it didn't ever happen. But the one I'm referring to specifically was when the game told you that you'd lost all your saves, or it showed you that all your saves had just gone all of a sudden. That's the kind of thing that not only puts you on edge, but also makes you fear death, because you don't want to lose your progress. I don't know if Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs will play into that at all. To be honest, I doubt they will. But the association they want with death is not one of relief, because when you die in these kind of games, it's a relief. You're away from the horror that was once there. They want it to be something that you really fear because it's going to have a permanent effect on your playthrough or your character or something like that. So whether they'll be able to actually pull that off will be interesting to see. Unfortunately for us, we won't be able to play the game today, obviously, on Halloween. It will be coming out in early 2013. That date is still set. The reason they delayed it was because they wanted to live up to expectation, which is fine by me. But overall, the game does seem to be an Amnesia game from its very core, just with some extra, hopefully, improvements on the game, especially on the narrative and some parts in the gameplay. So there we go. What to do with all this information? Well, I suggest you go and rewatch the trailer, making sure to look out for the things that I've discussed here. And if you find anything new, make sure to tell me in the comments section below. I'm pretty interested to hear what you might find.